Let's get Mikey. Yeah, he hates everything.
Hello, I'm Mike Munger, and I'm going to talk about what should things cost. One theory of value is called the labor theory of value. That is, the value of a product is the amount of labor that's embodied in it. Most modern economists would say that value is subjective. And what that means is that the value of something is how much I think it is worth to me. Now, you may have a disagreement about how much it's worth to you. And what's interesting about that is that means that there's a possible gains from exchange. If you and I can agree on a price, it must be true that we disagree about the value. And you may not have thought of that. The only way you and I can agree on a price is if we disagree about the value. If I have something that I value at $5 and you have something that you value at $9, and you want the thing and you would value it at $9, you will pay me $7. Remember, I value it at $5. I'll sell it to you for $7. You value it at $9 and you'll pay me $7. That means that we can agree on a price of $7, but it's because I think it's worth $5 and you think it's worth $9. Most agreements on price arise from a disagreement on value. And it's important to recognize that subjective value drives the economy. Now, in the discussions of the paradox of value, what's often said in a criticism of markets was that we don't really need diamonds, but they're expensive. We desperately need water or we'll die, but that's cheap. Clearly, market prices do not reflect value. So we're going to explore that when we talk about subjective value and what's called marginal analysis. Adam Smith made the labor theory of value famous. And when he talked about it, he said the real price of everything, what everything really costs to the man who wants to acquire it, is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. What is bought with money or with goods purchased by labor, as much as what we acquire by the toll of our own body. That money or those goods indeed can save us this toll. Now, he recognized that some labor was more valuable than others. And in fact, that's the basis of exchange for Smith. If you can make it more cheaply than I can make it for myself, I'll be better off buying it. So again, we disagree about the value because your labor is more valuable than mine. Yeah, I can pay you rather than do it myself. Problem is that the labor theory cannot explain price. And so if you believe in the labor theory of value, as Karl Marx did, for example, he thought that the price system was systematically exploitative. So if we look, we see that a liter of clean water might cost about $2. The same weight, it's about 4,500 carats of diamonds, would cost almost $14 million. But water is much more valuable. You can't live without diamonds. You can live without diamonds, but you can't live without water. So why do we think that price equals value? And so we see this balancing of price and value. And the question is, can we use markets to accomplish that? Well, the things to recognize is that prices always operate at the margin. Prices usually reflect a subjective disagreement. Any agreement on price means a disagreement on subjective value. Now, there is a problem that prices may leave out costs and benefits that are not privately owned. So there may not be an equality between price and value when there are what economists call externalities or problems with the environment. But as you may have seen in some of your other classes, externalities usually mean that property rights are not clearly specified. And that may be as much a problem of state management as it is with private market economies. But what's interesting when I say here prices always operate at the margin, suppose you didn't have any diamonds and you didn't have any water. And you thought you're going to have to live for a week. Well, which one would you pay more for? The water. The water is worth a lot more than the first carat of diamonds. However, you have plenty of water. I can go to my kitchen and water comes pouring out of the faucet. At the margin, water is not worth very much to me. Now, I don't have any diamonds. the first carat of diamonds that I want to give in earrings for my wife, because she would be very excited about having diamond earrings, the first diamonds that I purchase, I may be willing to pay a higher price for. But that's because we're operating on different margins. We have a lot of water and not very much diamonds. Prices operate at the margin. Now, we may also be worried about justice. And one objection is that markets must be unjust because, for example, football players, baseball players in the United States make a lot more than teachers. But aren't teachers worth more to society than football players? Well, we have quite a few teachers. And so the salary that we pay to teachers is what is required to get the next teacher to take a job when we already have quite a few. The very top football players, it's true, make a lot of money, but there's a lot of people who don't get paid at all. So on that margin, the very best players earn enormous rents or rates of return that are much higher than everyone else. But the price at the margin for football players is actually lower than the price at the margin for teachers. So we might think that price should equal the value of embodied labor, and that price should equal the cost of production. But it may not be able to do both of those two things, because the cost of production may reflect the cost of acquiring the inputs. Even if diamonds were laying around on the ground, they'd be expensive because they were scarce. They're not expensive because I had to dig them up. They're expensive because many other people want them. So the price reflects the opportunity cost of the resource. And that's why the theory of embodied labor is a mistake. In fact, what we have to do is think, how much do other people subjectively want this same resource? Because I'm trying to bid it away from them. I'm saying, I'm going to use these diamonds and you're not. In order for that to happen, I have to outbid them in an auction. So price should equal the opportunity cost of the resource, where opportunity cost is defined in subjective terms. How much is someone else willing to pay? So the opportunity cost of the resource in production is a much more accurate reflection of its value than the amount of labor that's embodied in that product. So when I say that price is the marginal subjective value, in some cases that's pretty easy. So wheat is homogeneous. It's all the same, comes in bushels, and one bushel of wheat is very much like another bushel. There are thousands of them, so the margin is very broad. So when I buy wheat, we can all agree that the price is relatively low because we already have quite a bit. On the other hand, suppose that we're talking about a beachfront mansion. Well, in that case, the marginal buyer sets the price. I don't have any beachfront mansions like that. And in fact, it was shown that this beachfront mansion was worth to someone $100 million. So the first beachfront mansion to a very wealthy person might be worth $100 million. It also might be worth $50 million. It's hard to say. The price is subjective. It comes down to the marginal buyer. Wheat does not come down to the marginal buyer because all of us are the marginal buyer. We're all purchasing this in a market where the goods are homogeneous. So what that means is that the amount of labor that is embodied in that beachfront mansion, it took a long time to build it, but the value of the mansion is far greater than the amount of the embodied labor because someone is willing to pay more for it. Wheat may very well be driven down to the cost of production because it is homogeneous and the margin is quite broad. So the answer to the supposed paradox is that once you account for the fact that prices operate at the margin, and you account for the fact that value is subjective, it is easy to explain why diamonds are expensive and water is cheap.
Yeah, he hates everything.